I need you to visualize something. It's a Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C. The sun is just coming up over the Potomac. Traffic on Constitution Avenue is starting to build. And then, something happens that has never happened in the 111-year history of American central banking. Black SUVs pull up to the Eccles building, the headquarters of the Federal Reserve. FBI agents in tactical vests step out. They approach the security desk. They present a warrant. And for the first time in American history, armed federal agents enter the building where monetary policy is made. This is not a movie. This is not a drill. This is a scenario that legal experts are now actively discussing as a genuine possibility. Because 3 days ago, on Sunday, January 12th, Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, confirmed that he has been served with Department of Justice subpoenas. The investigation? Alleged irregularities in a $2.5 billion renovation project at Fed headquarters. The accusation? That Powell lied to Congress about the project. And here's what the mainstream media isn't telling you. If Powell refuses to cooperate, if he asserts executive privilege or claims the investigation is politically motivated, the next step is enforcement. And enforcement means agents, with badges and warrants. Stay with me here because I'm going to walk you through exactly how we got to this point, what the DOJ is really after, and the absolutely unprecedented scenario of a Federal Reserve chairman being escorted out of his own building. Let's start with what we know for certain. On Sunday, January 12, 2026, Jerome Powell confirmed through Fed Communications that he had received subpoenas from the Department of Justice. The investigation is being conducted by Jeanine Pirro. Yes, that Jeanine Pirro, the former Fox News host who Trump appointed as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. The official focus of the investigation is the Fed's headquarters renovation project, a $2.5 billion project that has been plagued by cost overruns and delays. The DOJ claims there are irregularities in the project's management and that Powell may have made misleading statements about it during congressional testimony. Now, the White House has officially stated that Trump did not direct Pirro to investigate Powell. Let me say that again so you understand the absurdity. The president who has publicly called for Powell to be fired, the president who has attacked Powell's decisions on social media dozens of times, the president who nominated Jeanine Pirro for her position. That president supposedly had nothing to do with Pirro investigating the man he wants gone. If you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. And it's in much better condition than that Fed renovation project. But here's what matters legally. The subpoenas are real, the investigation is real, and the consequences are real. Jerome Powell now faces an impossible choice. Option 1. Cooperate fully with the investigation. Hand over documents, sit for depositions, let DOJ attorneys dig through every email, every memo, every text message related to the renovation project. The problem? In that pile of documents, they will find something. Not necessarily criminal, but something embarrassing. Something that can be taken out of context. Something that can be used to manufacture a for-cause justification to fire him. Remember Lisa Cook? Trump claimed mortgage fraud as his cause to fire her. The claim may be completely unfounded, but it gave him the legal wrapper he needed. If Trump can find anything at all in Powell's records, the Cook precedent means Powell is gone. Option 2. Resist the investigation. assert that the subpoenas are politically motivated, claim that the DOJ has no legitimate basis to investigate the sitting chair of an independent agency. The problem? Defying a federal subpoena is obstruction of justice. It's what got people thrown in prison during Watergate. It's what got Steve Bannon thrown in prison just 2 years ago. And if Powell defies the subpoenas, the next step is a court order. If he defies the court order, the step after that is enforcement. Enforcement means U.S. Marshals or FBI agents showing up at the Federal Reserve with a warrant. Now let me walk you through the scenario that financial analysts and constitutional lawyers are quietly discussing behind closed doors. This is speculative. This has not happened, but the legal pathway exists. It's February 2026. The Cook case has been decided. The Supreme Court has ruled that for-cause protections can be overcome if the president provides sufficient justification. Powell sees the writing on the wall. The DOJ investigation intensifies. Pirro's office issues a second round of subpoenas, broader in scope, demanding access to internal Fed communications about monetary policy discussions. Powell, citing the independence of the Federal Reserve, refuses to comply with what he calls a fishing expedition designed to intimidate the central bank. The DOJ goes to court. A federal judge, perhaps appointed by Trump, orders Powell to comply within 72 hours. Powell refuses. His lawyers file emergency appeals. The appeals fail. And then it happens. On a Tuesday morning, without advance notice, FBI agents arrive at the Eccles building. They present credentials to the Federal Reserve Police. Yes, the Fed has its own police force. There's a tense standoff. Phone calls are made. Lawyers are consulted. Ultimately, the Fed police step aside. They have no authority to obstruct a federal warrant. The agents enter. They go to the chairman's office on the second floor. They inform Jerome Powell that he is in contempt of court and that he must accompany them to be processed. Cameras capture the moment. A 72-year-old man in a suit, the most powerful central banker in the world, being escorted out of his own building by federal agents. The footage goes viral within minutes. Now let me tell you what happens to the markets in this scenario, because this is where it gets truly catastrophic. The moment that footage hits, trading algorithms, which are programmed to react to news events, start executing. Sell orders flood the market, not because humans decided to sell, because machines detected a crisis-level event and did what they're programmed to do. The S&P 500 drops 4% in the first hour. Circuit breakers are triggered. Trading is halted for 15 minutes. When trading resumes, it gets worse. The dollar is in free fall against every major currency. The yield on 10-year treasuries spikes as foreign investors dump American debt. Gold surges past $3,000 an ounce as people flee to safe havens. CNBC has already warned about this dynamic. Quote, "The direction, dollar down, stocks down, bonds down, is indicative of how these shocks are to be digested if they persist over the long term." But this isn't a long-term shock. This is an acute crisis. The head of the world's most important central bank being perp-walked out of his office. Every major bank in America has a crisis response team. Those teams are activated simultaneously. Emergency board meetings are convened. The question on everyone's mind: is the Federal Reserve still a functioning institution? Because if it's not, if the Fed has been effectively captured by the executive branch, then every assumption that underpins the global financial system needs to be reassessed. The dollar is the world's reserve currency because international investors trust American institutions. They trust that the Fed will act based on economic data, not political pressure. They trust that the rule of law applies, even to the most powerful officials. The moment an FBI raid proves that trust was misplaced, the dollar's status as reserve currency comes into question. Not in theory, in practice. In trading decisions made by sovereign wealth funds and central banks around the world. And here's what no one is talking about: the international reaction. Within hours of the raid, the European Central Bank holds an emergency call. The Bank of Japan issues a statement expressing concern about developments in the United States. The Bank of England quietly begins hedging its dollar exposure. Because central bankers around the world have a term for what they're witnessing. They call it institutional capture. It's what happens in developing countries when autocratic leaders take control of independent institutions. It's what happened in Turkey when Erdogan pressured the central bank. It's what happened in Argentina, in Venezuela, in Zimbabwe. The United States was supposed to be different. The United States was supposed to be the model that other countries aspired to. Not anymore. One European central banker, speaking on background, tells a reporter, "We always knew American democracy had vulnerabilities. We never expected to see the Federal Reserve treated like a subordinate agency." The ripple effects spread for weeks. Foreign direct investment in the United States slows. Companies that were planning to build factories in America put those plans on hold. Why invest billions in a country where the rule of law is visibly deteriorating? But here's the part of the scenario that might surprise you. Jerome Powell doesn't break. Remember Marriner Eccles, the Fed chair who Truman removed in 1948? Eccles stayed on the board and became a symbol of Fed independence. In this scenario, Powell does the same thing. He's processed for contempt. His lawyers file appeals, but he doesn't resign from the Board of Governors. His term runs until 2028. From a legal standpoint, being held in contempt of court doesn't automatically remove you from office. Powell could theoretically continue serving as a governor while fighting the contempt charges. And this is where it gets interesting, because Powell, even stripped of the chair title, even facing legal jeopardy, becomes a rallying point. Every vote he casts on the FOMC is a statement. Every dissent he files is an act of resistance. Deutsche Bank specifically raised this possibility. Quote, "If the administration insists on following through with a criminal prosecution of Chair Powell, and Senate Republicans stand firm in not advancing nominees to the Federal Reserve Board, it is likely the FOMC would choose Powell to remain on as chair. The Board of Governors can elect its own chair for internal purposes. Trump can name someone else to run the Fed officially, but the board can keep Powell as their leader. Two Fed chairs, one recognized by the White House, one recognized by the actual governors. That's not a scenario anyone has planned for. That's constitutional crisis territory. This is where we are. A sitting Fed chair has been served with DOJ subpoenas. The investigation is run by a Trump appointee with no central banking experience. The Cook case could eliminate the legal protections that keep Fed governors independent. And the precedent for what happens when officials defy federal investigations is clear. The scenario I just described, FBI agents entering the Federal Reserve, has never happened. It may never happen. But for the first time in American history, It's legally possible. And that possibility alone is changing how the world sees the United States. Here's what I need from you. If you're not subscribed yet, take a second and hit that button, because the next video in this series will blow your mind. I'm going to walk you through what happens if the Federal Reserve Board defies Trump and we end up with two competing Fed chairs, the constitutional implications, the market chaos, the moment America's economic system splits in two. You don't want to miss that. Share this video with anyone who has money in the stock market, anyone with a savings account, anyone who thinks this doesn't affect them. Because the independence of the Federal Reserve is the foundation of the American economy, and that foundation is being jackhammered. Drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think Powell will resist, or will he fold under the pressure? This is Red Team Politics. I'll see you in the next one.